Hey, Shalom, Shalom, Mr. Brother Abba Buff from the DC Church, coming at you, giving all praise, glory, and honor to Yahweh, Bashemel Shai, Bashem Kokadash, Yahweh being the Heavenly Father, Yahweh Shai, being whom the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ, Bashem meaning in the name, recall many Spirit, Kodash, meaning holy. These are the names and the powers that I come to in order to profess the 100% truth, and Lord's will seal the elect's faith. Shanya Kabaga, Willa Rakaza, Kayina, Ba'aith, wa Shalom, wa Barakam, Labakaran, Shasha Allah. Peace and blessings be upon the elect of the nation of Israel. Also, double honors be upon the elders and apostles of GMS, whom the Heavenly Father had enlisted the 100% truth to. And peace and blessings be upon the elect of the nation of Israel, to the men out there that's pushing this word in sincerity and truth. To you I say Shalom wa Barakamatha, peace and blessings be upon you. Now, without further ado, I had a discussion, I want to say a couple months ago, with this individual I was talking to. And, she basically made a very compelling argument about how King James is homosexual and he like little boys and so on and so forth. And one second. All right. One second. Salakia. And how all of these allegations toward King James is the reason why she doesn't believe in the Bible. Now, you can create whatever excuse you wanna have to disannul the Bible and disannul the verses that are in it, but the Bible has something that's undeniably true, and that is prophecy. So if and when you do encounter individuals who want to somehow, some way say something against the Bible, they can say anything they want against the law, but they can't say anything against prophecy. Because if what King James interpreted from the Bible with with their interpretation of him being a homosexual, which, we're going to debunk in this video. With all that being said, there's still prophecy within the Bible that is still relevant to this standing moment that has nothing to do with the sexuality of the man who interpreted the Bible. So when people say that, it's really irrelevant. They're just looking for an out to not believe in the Bible, or to kind of, parry worshiping the Most High via the scriptures, right? Or validating the scriptures. Now, with all that being said, I have just about 2 precepts, which I'll probably bring some precepts out in the midst of me going over this. But this is just pure history. All right. This is just pure history, because you have claims that King James had sexual relationships with these 2 individuals because he spoke of them very highly. And you got to also understand the atmosphere in the realm that we live in today was a lot different back then. Men were able to express themselves toward each other in a way that was non-sexual. And I can actually understand that, especially when you're a man of God and you have fervent feelings toward another man of God, in the sense of, you may have emotional, you can have an emotional attachment to another male that has nothing to do with sexual. The relationship isn't sexualized, okay? It's a platonic male-to-male, friend-to-friend relationship that has emotion involved. You can say you love another man and there be no sexual intent connected to that. But the fact of the matter is that we live in an over-sexualized world, so that when these letters were being sent out and this compassion toward this other man was being sent out, it was misinterpreted, and it was also utilized to shame, King James' legacy. For whatever which reason, because now you have these things being repeated today, and is the reason why people will be like, oh, well, I don't believe in the Bible because a gay man wrote it. But then you'll go out here and you go to a pride parade, or you'll say, you can't, God doesn't hate all people. So there's a lot of conflicting points and, beliefs within the whole King James was gay, which first and foremost, to set the premise of this video, whether the world believes he was gay or not, his sexuality has nothing to do with the validity of the Bible. And even if he was a scorching homosexual, the Bible was still interpreted to a T, the best way that it could potentially be interpreted in the English language. Okay, but this is to clarify that he was not a homosexual, and that these are rumors, indeed rumors, that were set up to deter people from believing in the validity of the Bible. Okay, which only the 2/3 are going to be caught by the wayside of that. So I said to ChatGPT, prove that King James wasn't a homosexual and that it was just a myth. Now I set it up like this because I wanted to hear what was going to be said in relation to proving that he's not, right? So it says, it isn't possible to prove that King James the sixth, which I think that was, and I don't know what number that is, the first, I think, was not a homosexual, just as it isn't possible to prove that with certainty that he was. Historians work with evidence, and the evidence about his private sexuality is incomplete and open to interpretation. Now, first and foremost, why the fuck are you trying to interpret his sexuality? Okay, and again, which we'll get more into detail, and these scholars are fucking wicked that came afterward that are trying to diminish or put shame or throw dirt on his legacy, right? So it says, what can be said is that the claims of King James, the claims that King James was definitely homosexual is stronger than the evidence allows, right? So it says, arguments often made by historians who are skeptical of the claim include marriage and children. And it says James was married to Anne of Denmark and fathered several children. This demonstrates that he had sexual relations with a wife, though it does not by itself determine his sexual orientation. Different historical concepts of sexuality. The modern categories heterosexual and homosexual and bisexual did not exist in the same way in the 16th and 17th century. Historians are cautious about applying modern labels to people from that era. Intense male friendships were common, okay? And again, what tells you that intense male friendships were common is David and Jonathan, which, Salakia, I didn't notate. Let me see. I just don't know how Salakia, bros. Nathan, I think it was pronounced, spelled that way. And it came to pass when he had made an end of speaking to Saul that the soul of Jonathan was knit with the soul of David, and Jonathan loved him as his own soul. So this is the deep, intimate, and not in the sense of intimate like sexually, but you can have an intimate relationship with your brother that has nothing to do with sex. It just means that you guys have a deep, strong connection to each other by the basis of something that's righteous, which is the word. So you got to think about it. What would compel a man to put his life on a line for another man? It's love. There has to be some intimate connection that this man has with this other man that will cause him to be compelled to want to even to dare to die for his friend. And that's what the same relationship that's detailed between Jonathan and David is the same type of relationship that was emulated in King James' relationship with his friends, or the other scholars that came up under him. And it's the same thing that any man of the Lord can explain to you that he has for his neighbor, okay? Because there are brothers that I feel that way toward, where I'm like, bro, I will put my life on the line for this man because I love him that much. But only a true servant of Yahweh Shema Shai will understand that, because the premise of our relationship is built off of things that are actually credible, like the word of the Most High. To see a man be consistent in the word and to see him make constant sacrifices builds trust within that man. And then not only that, but when he's looking out for you in your life, and he's also, divulging you from making mistakes and mishaps, and then you start to see the results of that later on in your faith, there's a level of love that you acquire in that man that is incomprehensible, and is also that which is stronger than the love that you would have for a woman, which only men of the Lord really understand that concept, because that love is given to us by Yahweh Bahashim Yahweh Shai, because Yahweh Shai laid his life on the line for his servants. So he had that same intimate love for his creation. But this world, talking about Esau Edom, the fucking fag himself, tries to demonize that love and call it homosexuality because that's how he feels. Because he's not capable of having that deep, intimate love with the man without it being sexualized. He's a fucking demon, man. And again, you got to get the concept of King James being an Edomite out of your mind for you to even, really to fully conceptualize this concept. It just, oh my God, bro. It just frustrates me, man. Because it's Esau Edom who wants to create this sexual relationship from man to man when he expresses love toward his neighbor. But it's not like that. And any man who's a man understands that. This 1 Samuel chapter 18, verse 1, it says, "And it came to pass, when he had made an end of speaking unto Saul, that the soul of Jonathan was knit with the soul of David." And I want to look up that word knit. And those who actually know, who have a brother that's really close to them, for myself, I can think of 3 men right now that I'm like, indefinitely, I would put my life on the line for them. But the word knit, it says to bind, to tie, to bind together. Now, you got to think about it. You have an intimate relationship with the woman, which the way that you come together with the woman to create intimacy is through sexual intercourse. But the way that you come together with a man to create intimacy is through a belief, okay? I was going to say religion, but it's through belief. It's through morals, okay? And we just so happen to have the same morals and are standing for the same cause. And that is what binds a man together. That's why it says all flesh consorteth to its kind. And I actually want to grab that real quick. We're going to come back to Sirach, the first chapter, consorteth. I hope that's how you pronounce it or spell it. There we go. Sirach chapter 13, verse 16. It says, all flesh consorteth according to kind, and a man will cleave to his like. So you're automatically going to be assimilated to people who live by the same standards as you. That's part of the reason why, as a man of God, in the truth, whether I'm in Arizona, whether I'm in LA, whether I'm in North Dakota, whether I'm in Texas, whether I'm in Atlanta, whether I'm in Florida, there are men that I can assimilate to because they believe in the same thing and they believe in the same doctrine and they have the same moral standards and they have the same moral ethics. And what that does is when you see a man be consistent in that practice, it grows love. It grows intimacy. You start to let him know more things about yourself. You start to be more relatable because now you can tell him things that are more personal that this world wouldn't understand, but he's capable of understanding because he's in the same body as you. All right? And talking about the body of Yahweh Shai HaMashiach. So let me see if there's a little bit more context on there. Sirach chapter 13, verse 14, it says, Love the Lord all thy life, and call upon him for thy salvation. Every beast loveth his like, and every man loveth his neighbor. And why does it say that? Because now it's going to tell you, it says, all flesh consorteth according to kind, and a man will cleave to his like. So men that have commonalities or have common practices as you, it's easier for you to assimilate to that person, and also for you guys to essentially come together or homogenize in mind, in spirit, and in practice. Okay. So it goes further to say, it says, what fellowship hath the wolf with the lamb, so the sinner with the godly. And that's part of the reason why, the sinner is not going to be able to explain the type of relationships that. And think about this. I want you to really think about this. Do you genuinely believe that if Esau Edom came and saw the way that we loved each other as men of God, would be able to explain that in a heterosexual form? No, because he himself is a devil. We ourselves understand that there's a high level, there's only heterosexuality amongst us, you know? But Esau Edom's not capable of understanding that, because if you say you love another man, he wants to create that. He wants to create this perception that you loving another man intimately, in the sense of you guys have the same practice, is something that's aligned with homosexuality. Because again, he himself isn't capable of doing that. Let me get more into the details of this. It says, men of James' time often express affection toward male friends in language that sound romantic to modern readers. Letters describing love or devotion between men do not automatically indicate a sexual relationship. Lack of direct proof. There is no surviving confession, eyewitness account, or indisputable evidence proving sexual relations between James and any male favorites. Okay? Much of the argument rests on inference from correspondence, court gossip, and political attacks. Okay? And that's primarily what it was. It's just political attacks. However, historians who believe James may have had romantic or sexual relations with men point to his unusually close relationship with favorites such as Robert Carr and George Villiers. Okay? Which these individuals probably played a very massive, and I'm sure if we did a little bit of research on what their contributions to their determination of interpreting the Bible at its peak, you know, and doing further research, you know, is more than reason why I'm sure he favored them. And why a man favors another fucking man is none of your fucking business. How then can you default that into homosexuality? That's why you really got to say, fuck this world, man. Try not to be as vulgar as possible, but goodness gracious. It says, letters in which James used highly affectionate language toward them, contemporary observers who sometimes speculated about the nature of the relationship. Why are you speculating about a relationship between a man and another man? Especially if they're on the right path of transliterating the Bible. It says the mainstream historical position is generally agnostic. There is no evidence suggesting James had exceptionally close emotional attachments to certain men, but there is not enough evidence to establish beyond doubt exactly what those relationships were, or to assign him a modern sexual identity with certainty. So if someone claims King James was definitely homosexual, the evidence does not conclusively prove that. If someone claims King James was definitely not a homosexual, that also goes beyond what the historical records can prove. But again, if you cannot, without a shadow of a doubt, prove that he was a homosexual, how can you then say that he was? Okay? Just because a man has favor toward another man and says things that sound, and in a way, romantic, because that's your interpretation, you know. But for those who have relationships with other men that are deep like that, because you can also say that with your father too. I have a deep love for my dad. The way that I love my father is stronger than the love that I would have for a woman. Okay? Are you then going to say I have a sexual relationship with my fucking father? It's like, come on, bro. These conclusions are just extremely wicked. And this is part of the reason why the world will try to use this as a default to say, oh, this invalidates the Bible. But again, how does his sexuality correlate to what is prophetically said in the Bible? It doesn't disannul any of those things. And if anything, if that was the case, why then were the ordinances set up in the Old Testament as far as what's right and what's wrong, as far as who you can sleep with and who you can't sleep with? Why wasn't that misconstrued? You mean to tell me you was a righteous homosexual? Get the fuck out of my face, man. Anyway, It says the most defensible conclusion is that the question remains debated amongst historians. And I'm not debating his sexuality, because his sexuality doesn't matter. His works matter. And what his works prove is that he was a man of God. Okay? I said, what are the artifacts used that scholars claim that he was a homosexual? Because I wanted to see the compelling argument, right? It says scholars argue that King James, the sixth, I believe, and the first, may have had romantic or sexual relationships with men, generally relying on documents, not physical artifacts. Again, not physical artifacts. The main piece of evidence are the letters to male favorites. It says the strongest evidence come from surviving letters James wrote to men close to him, especially Robert Carr and George Villiers, right? It says in some letters to Buckingham, James used language such as, "I desire only to live in this world for your sake," referring to Buckingham as his sweet child and wife. It says historians who see these relationships as romantic view such language as unusually intimate. Others argue that the royal correspondence and expressions of affection among elite men in this era can sound more emotional than modern readers expect. Right. So they were able to express themselves a lot more directly in the sense of, having a higher level of devotion and being able to personify that with words. Okay? And it doesn't default him into this place of homosexuality. It just means that he felt fervent for these men that did good work of Yahweh Shema Shai. Okay? So contemporary accounts and diplomatic reports, it says foreign ambassadors and court observers sometimes commented on James' attachment to certain male courtiers, however you pronounce that. It says, for example, some diplomats reported widespread court rumors that favorites exercise extraordinary influence over the king. Historians use these reports as evidence on how contemporaries perceived the relationships, though rumors are not the same as proof. Okay, and that's the point. It's a fucking rumor. Okay, court records and patronage patterns. Scholars note that James granted significant wealth, title, and influence to favorites such as Carr and Buckingham. Examples include rapid promotions, large financial gifts, exceptional access to the king. And these are all things that you would do for somebody who's doing good work or somebody you fucking love. It's very simple. If I'm in a position of power, I'm gonna promote my brother. It's inevitable. Because I love him, I will give him an exceptional amount of large financial gifts, and he would have access to me at any time. Come on, bro. Supporters of the homosexuality thesis see this as evidence of emotional attachment. Critics argue that favoritism toward courtiers was common amongst European monarchs and does not establish a sexual relationship. Statements attributed to James. Some historians point to remarks and letters and public communications expressing deep affection for Buckingham. These are interpreted differently depending on the historian's assumption about early modern language and relationships. Right. So even when you read contemporaries like Romeo and Juliet, which is, I guess, the most common one, you would see the way that they speak amongst each other, and the way that they speak is very expressive. It's very detailed. It's very deep within the level of conveyance of emotion. Okay? Because there wasn't this no homo, no diddy. There wasn't no homo and no diddy back then. All right? Because there was already the complete notion of understanding that men could love other men without it being sexual. Only is it in this world and in this atmosphere where you have these attributions of, you can't, if you express how you feel toward another man, it's gay. Which this is part of the reason why we do not, we're not Babylonians, bro. We are men of Yahweh Shema Shai according to our tribes. You really got to escape modern Western civilization customs and culture. Okay? So it says, what scholars do not have, there are no known diaries in which James explicitly states he had a sexual relationship with a man, or with men. Eyewitness accounts describing sexual acts, physical artifacts proving a sexual relationship, confessions by James or his favorites. Okay? Because they knew and he knew that it was all about the work and it was all about them actually having brotherly love toward each other. Okay? So the evidence is largely surviving letters, diplomatic reports, court records showing favoritism, contemporary rumors, and commentary. Because all of these require interpretation, historians disagree about what conclusions can be drawn. The debate is less about the existence of the documents themselves and more about how those documents should be understood in cultural context of the early 1600s. So again, we're in a whole different world. We're in a whole different era. We're in a whole different kingdom. So the customs that were carried in that kingdom are entirely different than what we have in this westernized world, okay? So what are the claims about him liking little boys? These are distinction, because and the reason why I needed to ask this question is because that is the complete claim that, he liked little boys, or he liked he was a pedophile. King James was a pedophile. And we're here to squander all of those misinterpretations and those diminishing of his reputation and who he was as a person. We're here to squander all of that. Okay. There is a distinction between claims that King James, the first and I guess the sixth, had close relationships with younger male courtiers and claims that he was attracted to children. There are no mainstream historical evidence that King James was sexually attracted to prepubescent children, and historians generally do not describe him as a pedophile. Okay? The claims you may have encountered usually stem from his relationship with younger male favorites such as Robert Carr, which we stated before, and George Villiers, right? It says, the fact that these were men significantly younger than James, affectionate relationships and affectionate language in letters and public displays of favor. However, these favorites were not little boys. For example, Carr was a young adult when he rose at court. Villiers was also a young adult when James took notice of him and promoted him. Some modern writers or internet commentators may exaggerate the age difference and describe the relationships in sensual terms, but that is different from the historical evidence. The historical debate is about whether James had romantic or sexual relationships with adult male courtiers, not about attraction to children. So, while there is long-standing scholarly debates over James' relationship with adult men, there is not a comparable mainstream scholarly case that he pursued or was attracted to little boys. So let's cut all the bullshit, man. Let's cut all the bullshit. And real quick, just so we add some context, I'm gonna read this one more time. 1 Samuel chapter 18, verse 1. And it came to pass, when he had made an end of speaking unto Saul, that the soul of Jonathan was knit with the soul of David, and Jonathan loved him as his own soul. And Saul took him that day and would let him go no more home to his father's house. Then Jonathan and David made a covenant because he loved him as his own soul. So this is what scholars also use to say Jonathan was gay and David was gay. Fuck you. If you personally believe that, then nigga, you gay. Fuck out of here. You're not gonna put shame on my forefathers. Not on my forefathers. Not on my forefathers' legacy. You're not doing that. Because the same type of love that they have is the same love we share amongst each other. All right? This is Hebrews chapter 13, verse 1. Let brotherly love continue. Say loud, man. With that, I give all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh, Shema, Shabbat, Shema, Kokadash, Shenya, Kabaga, Wella, Rikaza, Koyina, Ba'ai, Well, shalom, wa barakum, labakar, and shiyah. Until next time, I say shalom. I pray that you were edified through this epistle and that you have enough compelling evidence to prove that, again, these are all rumors and allegations and none of it is factual proof, and that whoever says that can fucking go to hell with gasoline draws on. And for the brothers, it's an inside joke, but you know what the hell I mean. Like, you can shove it up where the sun don't shine on yourself, because these claims are just completely, it's honestly in every which way satirical, but at the same time, it's like, bro, it gets to a point to where it's actually not funny. And these individuals are actually believing this, and it has nothing to do with the interpretation of prophecy, of the laws that are established, of any ordinances that are set up in the Bible. So you're just saying this to excuse you not believing in the Bible, and to that, the Heavenly Father is going to destroy you. Shalom.